I wasn't planning on staying. It was a rainy Thursday, the kind where everything feels slightly off-kilter, sky too gray, windshield wipers too slow. I had just finished work and was driving home when I realized Kayla had left her umbrella in the trunk again. Not unusual. She forgets stuff all the time. Usually it's her charger or her keys or the cardigan she insists she doesn't need and then regrets it when the air conditioning hits. But this time it was different. She'd told me that morning she was meeting up with old coworkers from her marketing firm, just catching up, she said, brushing past me with half a bagel in her hand and phone already glued to her ear. I kissed her cheek out of habit, told her to drive safe, and went about my day. But around 6:30, as I was pulling out of the grocery store, I spotted the umbrella still wedged under the back seat. Normally I'd text her, but for some reason I didn't. Maybe it was the way she'd been lately, distant, short-tempered, overly sweet at random intervals. Like she was compensating for something or trying to balance guilt with affection. So instead of texting, I drove to Ocean Alley. It's not far, a low-lit place near the waterfront known for its fish tacos and overpriced cocktails. I've been there once or twice. It's not the kind of place you'd go for casual drinks with a big group, especially not during a downpour. Still, I parked across the street and walked up to the window. And there she was. Kayla, my wife of 6 years, sitting in a corner booth with a man I didn't recognize. The first thing I noticed was her body language. She was angled toward him, legs crossed in his direction. One hand rested casually on his knee, not something you do with a friend or even a friendly coworker. Her head tilted just so, that half-smile on her lips, the one I hadn't seen in weeks, and she was twirling a strand of her hair between her fingers. She looked alive. And he was soaking it in. This guy, late 30s, maybe early 40s, black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, well-kept beard, sat there like he belonged. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was already comfortable, like this was familiar territory. I didn't move. Just stood in the rain, umbrella in hand, heart pounding in my throat. It's strange what your brain does in moments like that. Part of me thought maybe it's just work talk. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But the other part, the part I'd been ignoring for months, finally spoke up. Loudly. I stood there long enough to start drawing attention. A waiter glanced over. A couple at the bar whispered something. And then Kayla looked up. She saw me. Her eyes widened just slightly. Enough that I caught it. She straightened up, dropped her hand from his knee, and mouthed something to the guy. Then she got up and came outside. She didn't look surprised. Or like caught. Trevor, she said, half smiling, arms crossed against the cold. What are you doing here? You forgot your umbrella, I said. I didn't hand it to her right away. I just held it between us like a piece of evidence. Oh, she laughed awkwardly. That's sweet. But you didn't have to come all the way here for that. I said nothing. There was a pause. One of those heavy ones. She glanced back through the window, then turned to me again. That's just Marcus. He's in my department. We're finalizing a campaign proposal. He's helping with design. I nodded slowly. Seriously, it's not what it looked like, she added quickly, her voice a little too defensive. I know you get weird about stuff like this, but you're overreacting. There it was, the word. Overreacting. I've heard it before. When I found texts she didn't mean to leave open. When she came home late smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. When I asked why she had 2 different stories about where she spent the weekend her mother was supposedly visiting. Every time I brought something up, it was me being insecure. Me being jealous. Me making things up in my head. But I wasn't reacting at all this time. Just standing there. Watching her squirm. You didn't tell me it was a one-on-one, I finally said. It wasn't supposed to be, she replied. Everyone else canceled last minute. Did you tell me that? I didn't think it mattered, she said quickly. You were already in a mood this morning. I didn't want to get into it. She reached for the umbrella. I handed it to her and our fingers touched for a second, just long enough for the awkwardness to settle in. I should get back in, she said, her eyes darting away. It's still raining and I left my phone at the table. Yeah, I said, stepping back. Don't let Marcus get too cold. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Trevor, come on. I walked away before she could say more. Back in the car, I watched them through the mirror. She sat back down. He said something and she laughed again. Less now, but still smiling. She reached for her drink. His hand touched hers. Not long. Just a second. I drove home in silence. Later that night, she acted like nothing happened. Came in humming, placed her bag on the counter, kicked off her shoes. She asked if I wanted tea. I said no. She started talking about the campaign, throwing in jargon I barely followed, name-dropping a few coworkers I didn't recognize. When I didn't say much, She sat next to me on the couch and placed a hand on my thigh. "You okay?" she asked. I looked at her. "You still think I'm overreacting?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She blinked, then smiled. "Babe, it was just a meeting. You don't need to get all twisted up about it." Twisted up. Another favorite. "I've known Marcus for months," she continued. "He's married. He has a kid. We're just friends, I swear. You seriously think I'd cheat on you? Come on." I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Not really. But something in me had changed. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was like a switch flipped somewhere deep inside me. The kind that controls trust and assumption and all the invisible wiring that keeps a marriage running quietly in the background. It's not what it looked like. That's what they always say. But it's always exactly what it looks like. The moment your gut clenches and your heart stalls and your brain finally stops giving out free passes. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I didn't shout. I just let the silence sit between us like a third person in the room. One who had already seen everything I'd tried not to see. Something had shifted, and there was no coming back from it. The next morning, I couldn't stop replaying what I saw at the bar. It wasn't just the moment Kayla placed her hand on his knee. It was the way she looked up at him, the ease between them, the kind of comfort you don't build over 1 or 2 meetings. Something about that interaction didn't sit right, and the more I thought about it, the more the past year started to come into sharper focus. Started slowly. A late night here, a team dinner there. Back then, I didn't think much of it. We were both working full-time, trying to keep up with rent, bills, life. Busy schedules were normal. She was moving up at her firm, working on high-stakes campaigns, taking client meetings that ran late. At least that's what she told me. But now I was rethinking everything. I remembered the first time she bought that new black dress and told me it was for a client mixer. The tag was still on it when she left, but when she came home, it was off and stuffed into the back of the closet, never to be worn again. She said it didn't fit right, said she spilled wine on it. I didn't press. There were other things too, like how she started showering as soon as she came home, even if it was midnight, or how she began wearing perfume I hadn't noticed before. First, I chalked it up to stress. Her job was demanding, and I figured she was just adjusting. But then there were the hotel receipts. 2 of them. Both from the same boutique hotel in the city. One I recognized because it was near the design district, nowhere close to her usual clients. When I asked her about it, she told me it was for a company offsite, but couldn't tell me what the training was called or who else went. She brushed it off, made a joke about me being Inspector Trevor, and kissed me on the forehead. There was a time I would have laughed. I didn't that night. And then there were the business trips. 3 months ago, she told me she was flying to Denver for a marketing conference. She left on a Thursday morning and came back Sunday night. Said it was packed, back-to-back seminars and breakout sessions. But when I went to look up the conference later, I couldn't find anything online. I thought maybe I had the wrong name, so I asked her about it casually the next week. She couldn't remember the hotel name. Said everything was blurred together. That was the first time I checked her Travel Points app. She hadn't gone to Denver. She went to Boston. I stared at the screen for a long time that night, phone in hand, just trying to make sense of it. When I asked her directly, without mentioning what I'd found, she said I was being paranoid. "You need to stop looking for problems that aren't there," she told me. So I stopped asking. Not because I believed her, but because I was afraid of what I'd find if I kept pushing. Looking back now, I realized I had trained myself to ignore the signs. I didn't want to believe my marriage was unraveling. I didn't want to be the guy with trust issues, constantly second-guessing his wife's whereabouts. So I convinced myself it was normal. Everyone goes through phases. People get distant. Life gets busy. This was just a phase. But it wasn't. I remembered the way she started leaving earlier and coming home later. Her phone, once left out on the counter or plugged in next to mine, was now constantly on silent, screen down. One night I saw a message pop up from M. I didn't ask. I didn't even mention it. But it stuck with me. I knew her passcode, but I never used it. Not once. That felt like crossing a line. But now I wondered if not crossing it had cost me clarity I should have had months ago. There were moments when she was overly sweet, came home with my favorite snacks, offered back rubs without me asking, kissed me on the cheek while making coffee. At the time, I thought maybe she was trying to reconnect. But now it felt different, like she was managing guilt, trying to override it with small gestures so I wouldn't notice the distance she'd created. And it worked. For a while. Until last night. Until the bar. Until I stood in the rain and saw something my brain couldn't reframe or excuse. That wasn't a meeting. That wasn't two coworkers casually chatting over drinks. That was connection. That was chemistry. That was a moment between two people who weren't worried about being caught until they were. She called me dramatic once after I asked if she could be more open about who she spent time with outside of work. Said I was projecting my own fears onto her. I believed her then. Or wanted to. I looked through our shared calendar that afternoon, something we used to coordinate our weeks. Her recent entries were vague: strategy session, client sync, team check-in. No names. No locations. Just enough to seem legitimate but never enough to verify. That's when I remembered the car. Her old sedan, nothing special but familiar. I did most of the maintenance on it myself. She rarely let me drive it anymore. Said it was messy. Said she had work stuff in it. I never pushed. But a few weeks ago, while moving it for street cleaning, I noticed something odd in the trunk. A garment bag. Inside it, 2 dresses, heels, and a second set of cosmetics, travel-sized, carefully tucked in a pouch. I asked her if she was storing stuff there for a reason. Sometimes I get changed after work, she said. Makes things easier when I have events. What kind of events? She smiled. The boring kind you wouldn't want to attend. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was going over every offhand comment, every unexplained hour, every casual deflection that now felt less like a joke and more like a script. This wasn't stress. This wasn't distance. This was something else entirely. I sat at the kitchen table the next morning, her coffee mug still in the sink, thinking about the kind of man I'd become. Not the husband I wanted to be, the one who trusts, supports, believes in the best. But the one I now had to be, the one who paid attention, who asked harder questions, who stopped letting fear cloud his gut. She used to tell me I was too easygoing. That I didn't get worked up about anything. That she admired how calm I was. Now I saw how she'd used that calm as cover. I didn't want to be suspicious. I wanted to be wrong. But every piece was falling into place. And no matter how I turned it, the picture it painted was one I could no longer ignore. After a few nights of lying awake with that moment in the bar playing on loop behind my eyelids, I stopped waiting for answers to fall in my lap. I needed to know. So I started small, a GPS tracker tucked under the back bumper of Kayla's car. I ordered it online using a prepaid card, shipped it to a P.O. box I had at work for sensitive mail. It took 2 minutes to install, no bigger than a matchbox. Synced straight to my phone, just a tiny blinking dot moving across maps. I told myself it wasn't revenge. It wasn't paranoia. It was clarity. That Friday morning, she said she was heading to New Haven for a seminar. Some keynote speaker from Sweden, she told me. She even pulled up a half-baked itinerary she'd printed out. I didn't even have to squint to see the font didn't match. The logo in the corner was pixelated like it had been copied off a Google image search. She tossed it on the counter like a receipt and kissed me on the cheek before grabbing her bag. I said, "Drive safe." Same thing I always say. And then I waited. She pulled out around 10:14 a.m. The dot moved northwest for a bit, the highway, then a detour. Then she looped south again. Not toward New Haven. Not even close. By 1 p.m., her car stopped in a residential area near Long Island's shoreline. That's when I drove out. It took me 2 hours. My palms were slick against the steering wheel the entire way. I don't even remember the songs on the radio, just white noise filling the spaces between rising dread and the pounding in my chest. When I pulled into the neighborhood, IK** led the engine and coasted near the sidewalk. Her car was parked just outside a duplex, newer build, blue-gray siding, small balcony on the second floor. The kind of place someone rents when they want privacy. Not luxury. Just low traffic. I didn't go to the door. I waited. From the shadows of a tree-lined curb, I watched the second-floor window. For a while, nothing moved. Then light flickered silhouettes. And then I saw her. Kayla. Wearing a robe I didn't recognize. Champagne flute in hand. Smiling. She walked past the window once, then again. Then he appeared. Same guy from the bar. Marcus. He walked up behind her, placed his arm around her waist. She leaned back into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. He kissed the side of her head. And I just sat there. Frozen. I didn't get out of the car. Didn't bang on the door or shout her name or confront them. Instead, I opened the app linked to the small dash camera I had secretly installed in her car a week prior, voice activated, time to start recording when the ignition turned on. I found a file from that morning. Listened to it in the parking lot, parked next to trimmed hedges and quiet homes. Marcus's voice. Did you pack the robe I like? Kayla laughed. Always. Rustling. A kiss. Then her voice. Do you think he suspects anything? A pause. Not unless he started growing a spine, Marcus said. They both laughed. I hit pause. Suddenly, the world outside felt muted as if my ears were underwater. The waves of reality crashing in slow motion. I leaned back in my seat, staring up at the sky through the windshield. Overcast. Fitting. I didn't know what to feel. Anger was too easy. Pain too familiar. But numb, that came naturally. When I got home, I uploaded the audio, made a secure backup, then opened a folder on my desktop. Named it something boring, insurance estimates, and started dragging files inside. *TS of calendar inconsistencies. Photos of hotel receipts. GPS logs. I transcribed the audio word for word. Even formatted it like a script as if I were trying to make it easier for someone else to believe. But I didn't share it. Not yet. That night, Kayla came home like nothing happened. Said the seminar was a bit underwhelming. She kicked off her shoes, poured herself a glass of wine, and curled up on the couch beside me. Asked me how my day was. I looked at her and realized she didn't know I knew. And for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I nodded. Work was fine. She smiled. You want to watch something? Sure. So we sat there watching some mindless cooking competition while she nuzzled into my side the same way she did on our third date. The same way she did after we got engaged. Her head resting on my shoulder like everything was still real. But it wasn't. And I couldn't pretend anymore. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I slipped into the garage and sat in the driver's seat of her car. I played back the audio again, this time with headphones. I scrubbed through older files, pieced together conversations from mornings, from parking lots, from after-work rendezvous she claimed were strategy sessions. Every lie she told, every carefully constructed excuse was right there in her voice. In one recording, she told Marcus he still believes I'm going to Denver next week. Another laugh. He even offered to drive me to the airport. And then Marcus, that's brutal. I know, she said. But he's so passive. It's like he wants to believe the lie. That part hit harder than anything else. Because she was right. I did want to believe the lie. I wanted to believe the version of her who still laughed at my jokes, who cried watching reruns of This Is Us, who left me notes on the bathroom mirror in dry erase marker. I wanted to believe that we were just going through a rough patch. That she was tired. That I was distant. That we just needed a vacation or a couple's retreat or therapy or time. But it wasn't time we needed. It was truth. And I finally had all of it. So I shut the car door, locked the garage, and walked back inside. She was asleep on her side of the bed, hair sprawled across the pillow, one hand tucked under her cheek like a kid pretending innocence. I watched her for a moment. Then I turned off the light. Not to rest, but to prepare. The next morning I started preparing. Not for a fight. Not for a confrontation. For something quieter. Cleaner. I had seen enough cheating revenge stories to know how messy things could get when emotion took over. I didn't want that. I didn't want screaming matches or public scenes or social media blowouts. I wanted facts. Leverage. Control. So while Kayla was in the shower, I emailed myself everything. The audio recordings. The GPS data. The *TS. I saved it all to a hard drive and 2 encrypted backups, one at work, one tucked inside a Ziploc bag behind the HVAC panel in the garage. I labeled it all like it was part of an insurance claim. Because in a way, it was. I reached out to a lawyer that afternoon, someone a buddy from college had used during his divorce last year. Quiet guy. High ratings. Low profile. We met in his office 2 days later. I told him everything. He didn't flinch. He walked me through the process like a surgeon explaining a complicated but routine procedure. He asked for the evidence. I handed him the drive. He plugged it in, browsed through a few files, and nodded slowly. I can work with this, he said. She has no idea you've seen any of this? None. Good. That gives us time. Over the next week, we set things in motion. I stopped using our shared banking app and opened a new account in my name only. Transferred my paycheck. Redirected all auto-pay bills and subscriptions. He told me to move slowly. Gradually. A few things every day. The goal was to be invisible, not leave a trail of red flags. Meanwhile, I started going through the house. Not to pack, not yet. Just to sort. I made a list of assets. Furniture. Electronics. Jewelry. Anything that could be accounted for in divorce proceedings. I photographed everything and created a spreadsheet. I kept notes like I was building a case for an audit. And I started taking **TS of her calendar again. Because even after everything, she kept lying. Said she was flying to Chicago. The tracker showed her parked outside the same duplex. Said she was staying late for a presentation. The camera picked up Marcus talking about dinner plans before she even clocked out. Each lie added another line to the spreadsheet. Another folder in the drive. I went to bed earlier than usual and feigned exhaustion. She still tried to curl up beside me. Still whispered, "Love you," like nothing was unraveling. I whispered it back. But I was already gone. The final straw wasn't even dramatic. It was a bouquet. I sent it anonymously, a test. I ordered roses through a local florist and had them delivered to her office with a simple card. "You looked amazing last night. Until next time." The delivery came at 11:12 a.m. At 11:26, the camera in her car recorded a call. "Did you send flowers?" she asked. Marcus laughed. "I thought you didn't like roses." "I don't. But they're beautiful." "So? I might forgive you," she teased. I saved the recording, time-stamped it, and sent it to my lawyer. He asked if I was ready to move forward. I said yes. The next day, we served the paperwork to her employer. It wasn't about divorce yet, not officially. It was about conflict of interest. See, Marcus wasn't just a coworker. He was a subordinate, technically in her department under her supervision. I flagged the relationship in an anonymous email and attached a brief file of concerns regarding unreported conduct and potential ethics violations. We knew her company had federal contracts, which meant compliance reviews. Zero-tolerance policies. It wouldn't matter if they were discreet. All that mattered was the evidence. And now they had it. 2 days later, Kayla came home pale. She said nothing during dinner. Didn't ask how my day was. Just sat quietly, pushing pasta around her plate. I asked if everything was okay. She forced a smile. "Just a long day." I nodded. That night, while she was in the shower, I checked her work email from her laptop. Something she'd left open for once. There was a flagged message from HR. Subject line, "Immediate compliance inquiry urgent." Attached, "Meeting request. Policy acknowledgement. Confidentiality clause." She never said a word to me about it, so I kept going. The next afternoon, I sent a small package to her company's legal department. No return address. Inside, a flash drive with the cleanest 3 minutes of her and Marcus from the car audio. No names, just voices, context. It was enough. My lawyer filed for asset separation the following day. Bank accounts frozen. Joint credit cards shut down. Passwords changed. Access revoked. All without a word. When Kayla got home and realized our Netflix account was locked, she blinked twice, then asked if I'd changed the password. "Must be a glitch," I said. She shrugged, but the cracks were forming fast. I took a day off work under the guise of needing rest. I spent it closing every door, metaphorical and literal. Canceled her authorization from our safety deposit box. Notified our realtor to put the house on quiet alert. Legal freeze in case of property dispute. I documented everything. Then I sent one last thing. Courier. He arrived at her office lobby around noon with a second bouquet. Smaller this time. More muted. This one wasn't anonymous. I signed the card. "From your favorite designer." The courier took a photo as requested. In it, she's mid-hug with Marcus. Grinning. Caught. I sent the photo to my lawyer, and we prepped the final package. One for the court. One for her. But I didn't hand it over yet. Because the next move wasn't legal. It was personal. And I needed her to see it before she felt it. 3 days later, the dam broke. Kayla came home in silence again. But this time, her silence was thick. Tangled. The kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. I watched her walk straight into the kitchen, pour herself a glass of water, and lean against the counter like she might slide to the floor if she didn't hold on. She didn't ask how my day was. Didn't make eye contact. Just stood there, unmoving, glass untouched. How was work? I asked even though I already knew. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she mumbled, "We had a compliance audit." I nodded slowly. "Anything serious?" "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Just standard stuff. Routine. They do it all the time." But I could tell. She wasn't sure how much I knew, and she was scared to ask. That night, she spent 2 hours scrolling her phone, typing and deleting messages. She didn't even pretend to sleep. Around 2 a.m., she got up and walked to the guest room. I heard her close the door quietly, as if the soft click could keep her secrets from waking me. Didn't. By morning, she had wiped her work laptop clean. Every file, every message, every scrap of history she could reach. Too late. The firm had already pulled her email logs. Her access was suspended pending further review. A phrase she didn't share with me but which appeared in the letter my lawyer received the next day, attached to a formal inquiry from her company's legal department. Marcus, meanwhile, had vanished, quietly reassigned to a third-party consultancy. The internal memo didn't say more, but the subtext was clear. Separation, isolation, damage control. Kayla tried to get ahead of it, called a PR friend, reached out to HR colleagues in other companies. She tried to explain it away, said it was a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, that Marcus had exaggerated their connection. But **TS don't lie. Neither do timestamps, and certainly not voice recordings. Her firm worked with federal grants, public money. They couldn't afford even the appearance of impropriety. And she had crossed every boundary they cared about. Supervisor-subordinate relationship, undisclosed personal entanglement, non-compliance with ethical reporting. She was suspended with pay pending an internal review. She came home the day she got the letter and walked straight past me, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. I didn't say a word, just let her sit. Eventually, she looked at me with tired eyes. Not teary, just used up. "Do you think I ruined everything?" I could have said 100 things. I could have told her the truth. That everything she was feeling now was the delayed consequence of choices she made freely. That what she was calling a mistake was actually a series of deliberate actions repeated over months. But I just said, "I don't know." She nodded slowly, as if she expected that. That weekend, she started deleting photos. All of them. From her phone, her laptop, even the cloud backups she once insisted we keep. Vacation albums, anniversary selfies, pictures from our first apartment, the one where the pipes clanged in the winter and we had to boil water on the stove. Gone. She wasn't erasing history. She was trying to rewrite it. I caught her wiping chat logs too. Messages with Marcus, deleted. Calendar entries scrubbed. Notes rewritten. She even changed her voicemail message. Professional sterile, like she was applying for new roles already. She moved through the house like a ghost in cleanup mode. She was looking for every loose thread she could burn, every trail she could erase before someone else traced it. But she never asked me why the credit card stopped working. Never asked why her passwords no longer synced. Never asked where the mail was going. She knew, or at least she suspected. But she didn't want confirmation. She wanted time. Time to patch holes. Time to find another foothold before the next shoe dropped. She started calling friends she hadn't spoken to in years. Old bosses. Former co-workers. She even reached out to my sister, under the pretense of checking in. Everyone said the same thing later. She seemed off. Because desperation doesn't wear well. It clings. One evening, she asked if I wanted to go to dinner. Her treat. "Anywhere you want," she said. "You pick." I said I wasn't hungry. She offered to cook instead. I told her I'd already eaten. The truth is, I wasn't trying to punish her. I just couldn't look at her without seeing all the pieces she tried to hide. The man in the robe. The laughter in the car. The voice that mocked me behind my back. I didn't see my wife anymore. I saw the cleanup crew. The next morning, she got the final letter from her company. Mandatory review meeting scheduled for the end of the month. Not disciplinary yet. But it was coming. The writing was on the wall, and even she couldn't pretend not to see it. Marcus resigned 2 days later. No warning. No email blast. Just gone. The LinkedIn update came later, pursuing new opportunities. Kayla read the notification and stared at her screen like it had personally betrayed her. That night, she cried in the shower. I could hear it from the hallway. That soft, strangled kind of sobbing people do when they know the walls are thin but they can't stop it. I didn't knock. I didn't go in. Because I wasn't the one she wanted comfort from. I was just the witness. The one still standing. And she knew it. The reservation showed up on her calendar Friday morning. Marseille. 7:30 p.m. 2 guests. It used to be our place back when we were still discovering each other, when date nights meant something more than just escaping a routine. Kayla saw the entry and froze for a second. Then she did something I hadn't seen in weeks. She smiled. She must have thought I was reaching out. An olive branch. A sign that maybe, just maybe, I was open to repair. By late afternoon, she was rushing around the house. Ironing a dress. Fixing her hair. At one point, she even stopped in front of the mirror and whispered to herself, "He still loves you. He still loves you." She got there early. The table was already set. Candle lit. Glasses filled. 2 chairs. She sat down, smoothed her dress, waited. But I never came. Instead, the waiter handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a note, handwritten in quiet block letters. "This is the last time you'll see me in a place like this." She looked up confused, maybe even hopeful, and that's when she saw me. Across the restaurant, seated with another woman. I was laughing. Relaxed. Completely immersed in the conversation. Kayla stared, trying to find something in my expression, a flicker, a glance, anything that would signal I still cared. But I never looked her way. Not once. 3 days later, she came back to the house. Our house. But the gate was shut. There was a new sign. "This property is now managed by Valor Housing, Veterans Rebuilding Futures." Confused, she walked to the front and saw a large envelope taped to the gate. Inside was a single still image her from the bar that first night. Hand on his knee. Smile on her face. The beginning of the end. Below it, in clean print. "You left the door open. I just chose to walk out." She tried the handle. Locked. Tried the doorbell. No sound. She called my phone. It rang once, then went silent. A neighbor, watering her plants, glanced over and said quietly, "He doesn't live here anymore. You'll need to contact the foundation if you want anything back. They're strict about appointments." Kayla dropped to the steps, hands over her face. No one came out to help. No one came outside at all. She had spent months rewriting the past, trying to delete what she had done. But now everything was clean. Every trace of her gone. Photos removed. Names scrubbed. Her presence sealed away like a closed chapter no one was willing to reread. She had burned her way through everything and in the end found herself locked out not just of the house but of the life she once had. And I didn't leave in anger. I left in silence. Which made it worse. Because there was no one to argue with. No one to convince. No door to knock on. Just emptiness. And consequences.